I'm Kirk Harnack. On This Week in Radio Tech, we're cramming for the National Eas Test coming in November. Chris Tobin joins me for This Week in Radio Tech next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Cachefly at cachefly.com.
This is This Week in Radio Tech, episode 103, recorded October 19th, 2011. This is only a test. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Telos Systems and the new VX Voice over IP multi-studio talk show system. On the web at telos-systems.com/VX. Hi, it's time for This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host. Glad that you're along. This is the show where we talk about all kinds of things that have to do with audio that is broadcast quality. What does that mean? We talk a little about that. We talk about transmitters and RF and even receivers and propagation. Sometimes we get into ham radio stuff. Sometimes we're into very digital modes of operation for broadcasters. And once in a while, we even touch a little bit on TV. That's just radio with pictures, right? Hey, on the show with me on this episode is Chris Tobin. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Hello, Kirk. I'm doing well. I'm with the Musicam USA folks. We manufacture audio codecs over Ethernet and video codecs over Ethernet and a few other things in between. And that's the disclosure there, so everybody knows what's going on. But I'm doing well here in New York City. It's raining, though. It's a rainy night, so it's kind of wet.
It's the same here in Nashville. It is raining here. A big system came through and dumped some rain on us yesterday, and we still have it going on. And it's raining over a good part of the southeast U.S. and apparently up your way too. But hey, that's I guess this isn't the weather show. That's a different show. Our show is brought to you by the folks who are also my employers. That's the folks at Telos, Omnia, and Axia. Telos, makers of phone systems and IP codecs. Omnia, makers of high quality audio processors for AM, FM, and internet. And also Axia, folks who make audio networking and routing and mixing console systems. We thank them for their support. On This Week in Radio Tech, we talk about a lot of different things that have to do with audio and broadcasting. Sometimes we have guests on, and I would imagine, by the way, the AES convention is occurring. It starts actually tomorrow with some sessions and continues on into Friday. This is tomorrow, which would be the 20th. Also Friday the 21st of October and Saturday the 22nd. I'm going to be there along with, I think, a few of our listeners to this show will be there as well. I'm doing on a panel talking about IP audio streaming and also backhaul audio. Chris, are you involved in any of the panels there this year?
Yes, I will be on the panel regarding backhaul with you. And Bruce Burnson from XM Sirius Satellite Radio as well. The three of us will be doing that panel.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, I look forward to that. If you haven't registered, you can still go to aesbroadcast.org. No, that's a .com. aesbroadcast.com and get yourself registered for that. You still may be able to get in the exhibits only for free. So anyway, please check that out. And our friend David Bialik, who's been on the show a few times, talk to us about the stuff that's going on. But if you want to know about it, aesbroadcast.com, and you'll see the various sessions going on there for broadcast engineers. Now, there is some other news that's coming up soon, and Chris, I guess we ought to go ahead and talk about that, and that's this EAS. EAS stands for Emergency Activation System. It is a system that some broadcasters don't like. I wouldn't go as far as to say hate, but it's a pain, and yet it's a service, and it doesn't work well, but it could work well. It could work better. It could possibly work great, and there are changes afoot in EAS, specifically with this system called CAP, that is designed to. These changes are designed to make EAS work more reliably and be able to get information out, perhaps in a more high quality manner and in a more sure manner, because EAS for years has relied upon a daisy chain of broadcast stations to get word out to folks. Just a couple weeks ago here in Nashville at our SBE meeting, we had a terrific presentation by Jason Cooper. And Jason is the chief engineer for WSM here in Nashville, Tennessee, where I live. Transmitter's just a few miles away from my house. Big 50,000-watt diamond-shaped Blawnox tower, and they really pump out a lot of power. And they are one of the PPAC stations, so they have some direct linkage to the emergency services. And I think maybe I'm talking out of school here. They have a pretty direct connection to the White House, as do the other PPAC stations. Chris, I've probably talked beyond the extent of my knowledge. What can you add to what I said? And tell us about the EAS test that's coming up that everybody is talking about.
Well, they're looking to do on November 9th a national EAS test to test basically the ability to alert the citizens of this fine nation from a higher federal level, federal government level. And yes, the PCAP or PPAT stations, the ones that the LP1s and LP2s listen to, have direct connections to, we'll say, the White House, Department of Homeland Security, that kind of thing. And the ultimate goal is to be able to transmit a message from the higher levels of the executive branch to the nation. And then coming in November 9th, the goal is to test that nationwide, and the FCC and a few other agencies are going to be monitoring, and broadcasters are going to be on alert to make sure they do it right. So part of that will have the National Association of Broadcasters, the NAB, working with PSAs, public service announcements, leading up to the event. At least they're asking radio and TV stations to promote it through that manner. I think up the week before to try and do a somewhat heavy rotation, if you will, of these spots. But just pepper them in now, and between now and November 9th, just let people know what's going on. It's just a simple test. It's real quick. It's just forward a message, and then off we go. We're done. And then we sit back and do the Monday morning quarterbacking and find out where the weak links are. And people are still preparing. I believe I just talked to a radio station the other day. They're in the process of installing some brand new EAS decoding equipment for this big test. That's in the simplest terms. If you want to get real technical, it's not worth that craziness. It's too early to tell how it's going to turn out.
Do you have a feeling like it's really going to be like Y2K, like it's going to happen just fine and everything's going to work okay except for a few stations here or there? Or do you think there's going to be some major problems? As I say, like we had in Mississippi, we had a perfect test of the Mississippi dry cleaning network, where after the test, dry cleaning commercials went on the air all over Mississippi because they didn't run the end of message test. Do you think it's going to go like that, or is it's going to go pretty smooth?
I'm thinking it'll go smoothly only because we've been given a heads up. We as broadcasters have been given a heads up for some time now, and if that fails, it would have to be somebody who has not been paying attention. Literally, I'd say in the very far distance of the communities in any particular region. Places where they literally are unattended, and maybe they check in once every 6 months. It's very possible. But I think in most parts of the country, in the urban centers and large suburban areas where broadcasters are very active with communities, I don't think you're going to see a hiccup like that. At least I'm hopefully not envisioning a Orson Welles War of the Worlds type of thing where Lakehurst, New Jersey suddenly becomes the epicenter of chaos. But no, I don't think so. I think we're going to do well. And you know what? If it's like lifeguard duty on a beach and you've been practicing and practicing, when the test comes, if it's quiet, goes according to plan, that's a good thing. If it falls apart really bad, well, we didn't prepare properly, which is not a good thing. So that's how I look at it. I'd say we probably have a 90% chance of it going the way it should. The 10% where we may have some trouble might just literally be something we overlooked, or because it's optional for some folks that they may not have opted properly, and the EAS just lingered. Hopefully, we won't have any dry cleaning commercials on the air, though. That's a hope.
This EAS, nationwide EAS test, is going on November the 9th at something like, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, thereabouts? 1 p.m. Eastern Time?
Yes. Yeah, somewhere around there, yes.
And to my way of thinking, if it doesn't go well, there's two things that happen. If it doesn't go well, broadcasters will be embarrassed that it didn't, or whoever was responsible for it not going well could be embarrassed, and other media, including our own radio media news, gets hold of that and points out that broadcasters aren't prepared for and that. On the one hand, I think that sounds worse than it really is. Look, if there was a national emergency, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff or President Obama got on, wanted to hold an emergency press conference. I can tell you that any station that needed to, any station that wanted to, would be carrying that press conference via their own state news network or national news network, whether it be ABC or CBS or Fox Radio News or whatever it may be. They're going to throw it, or NPR, they're going to throw that on live and carry it with or without the EAS system. So if there's something like that, like getting the president on the air, I don't see that EAS plays a major part in making sure that gets done. Now, if you have an emergency where stations are unattended, or you have some kind of local emergency like a weather or an Amber Alert or a tsunami alert, that kind of thing, where it's really fast and it has to be and it has to happen whether the station is attended or not, then I can see where making sure this stuff works is very important. Tell me where I'm wrong.
You're not wrong, but I think the problem we're going to have is if something does go in a bad way, not bad, fatality wise, but just didn't go the way we thought it should or as expected. You have the issue of broadcasters aren't prepared. Not true. We know for a fact as broadcasters on this program and those of us who work with broadcasters every day, in many communities, if not all, broadcasters are always prepared to handle, we'll call them emergencies, whatever they might be, natural disasters, man-made disasters, whatever the case is. And they do come, the call to arms takes place and it's done right. Unfortunately, and I've said this before on many other broadcasts we've done, netcasts, EAS is not treated like program content throughout the radio station is. It is just it's mandatory. I got to do it. It's like getting a driver's license. Like, okay, got to do it again. Here we go. Mm-hmm. It's there. We all tend to drive erratically or do something different, but we have a license, therefore we're allowed to do it and, beg for forgiveness. That's part of the problem with this test is going to reveal that mindset. I worked for a broadcast entity on 9/11, and I can assure you that we were prepared as we could be possibly for any emergency we can think of. And that day, we were distributing programming across the country via satellite. We were in touch with every city agency, including the mayor of the city, the governor of the state, and got the information out to where it had to go. It happened. It happened the way it should. Did it happen in an organized form that you could take a book? How like some people like to have a book and like, well, yeah, we went page 42. You guys did exactly as Protocol B calls for. You know what? Unless it's part of your day-to-day regimen, it's not happening. And the only people that do that are people in the military, law enforcement, emergency medical services, and that's why they do what they do, and they do it well. So November 9th, we'll have some interesting outcome. But, to take it negatively and to try and run with it and make something that it's not, that's just wrong, and it's an injustice to both the people trying to make it work and those of us as broadcasters that, we know it happens. Things happen when they do, and we make it come together. EAS, until it becomes part of the program psyche, it's just going to continue to be in this, I'll call it an ad hoc state.
Hey, Burke, I don't know if you got the link or not, a little inside baseball here. Burke, I sent you a link to a YouTube video that I would love to see that video, at least about 30 seconds of it, in 2 or 3 minutes into that video. The first minute or two is some graphics that aren't real exciting, although they are informative. But a couple of minutes into that, there's a great video on YouTube that was just put up, and let's see who put that thing up. It's in the Radio Mag Online account. So if you want to look up that, it's the name of the video is National EAS Test EAN Demonstration, and this is this demo is voiced by Barry Thomas, who was our guest about 3 shows ago, the 100 show where we were talking about war stories. And so Barry Thomas, I don't know if he put this together, but he sure voiced it. And anyway, it's worth watching because it shows you exactly what's going to happen during this test on November 9th. So you can be better prepared for it. Hey, Burke, any chance that video is ready to roll a couple minutes in just so we can see a little bit of it?
It's going to take me a second. The machine that I have that we can show it on doesn't have sound, so I have to...
Oh, okay.
So give me a couple minutes.
Do you want us to whistle along?
Well, I can play it without audio.
No, I think the audio is just a little bit important, so let's
take me a second. I'm just going to email the link to myself.
Okay, no problem. So we'll watch that, and we'll put the link in the in the show notes as well, so you can see that. I think every engineer ought to watch this video. Did you see this video pop up on any tweets you get like that, Chris? And Chris's volume is down.
Sorry, my dog came in earlier and squeaky toy noise was behind me.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
I have not heard from anyone in particular about that video, but I did check it out. The video is very informative. Makes sense.
Yeah, it is. And the methodology for doing the demonstration is also explained, and the EAS duck farts, the same codes are not real, so you wouldn't want this audio to accidentally get on the air somewhere, and so in case it accidentally did, at least the information is not real, because it could cause a real problem if this was if anybody accidentally played this audio on a radio station somewhere, right?
Absolutely. Thank goodness they were thinking forward and made sure it wasn't exactly formatable in that case. That's good. But no, it was a good video.
So, Chris, I got to believe there are a lot of stations that look at EAS as something we got to do. And, at my own radio stations, sure, we have the gear in the rack. We have the fixed-tuned radios. You don't have to use a fixed-tuned radio, but we do. We bought all the right radios. We have outdoor antennas to pick up the NOAA weather radio. To pick up the LP1 that we're assigned to. I'm speaking in Mississippi here, by the way. In American Samoa, our station is the LP1, and we're just a bit far removed, although we're apparently getting a fair amount of gear from the government to help us keep American Samoans informed at our station there, KKHJ-FM. I don't think they've installed it yet, but they're going to send a contingency down to American Samoa, to our radio station, to install a couple of generators at the transmitter and a generator or two at the studio. And I'm not sure what else equipment we're going to get, but somehow we're going to be in touch with the White House there in American Samoa. So it should be interesting when that happens. But sometimes I'll go into our own stations in Mississippi and just double check and make sure that we're receiving stuff. And it still seems like from time to time we don't receive a test properly, and I'm just not convinced that it was sent properly. I'm not convinced that the people who should be paying attention to this, the people who are sending the tests, are doing it right. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm not sure that the government agencies at the local and state levels, or even at the weather services offices, are doing what they're supposed to do. What's your experience? Is it better in New York? You finding things are happening the way they're supposed to?
Well, I will say that in New York City, the local government, the city government, has done a very good job. I've worked with them over the last several years on procedures for EAS, for alerting, and all the various tests that we've done, and procedures and redundancies. And we've actually streamlined the SOP, the standard operating procedures, for dissemination of information through the city EAS and the broadcasters very well. Weather service, for the most part, is done pretty good. The problem you'll run into, and this is the design of the system, you can have a monthly test comes in, EAS test, and then followed by a weather service alert. You just blew out the monthly test, and you didn't know that, and then you went to relay the monthly test, and you got a weather service alert. So those are the things that the system still has in it that need some thought put into it. And I'm not sure if the agencies all involved will ever talk to each other in a uniform or unified arrangement. But New York City, I can speak, definitely got the act together, have it in place, procedures. There is an actual person or two persons that monitor EAS devices at the Office of Emergency Management. There are people assigned to it. When an alert goes out, and a test is done, it is done with precision, I will say. And I do know of several other cities across the country that they're in the same shape. So if the broadcasters and local government get together and do it right and set aside the fences and the boundaries of jurisdiction, you can make it work. If you don't, yes, you're right. Things will just be chaotic.
Well, with the video's ready to go, Burke's going to play that for us. And so what we're going to watch here is we'll watch it until we're tired of it. The whole thing is 7 minutes long, so we're not going to watch the whole thing. We're starting a couple minutes into it. This is the National EAS Test and EAN demonstration. And yeah, a couple minutes into this, Burke, fire away. Yeah, there we go. Let's watch it there, and I'll tell you when to stop.
The FIPS code that will be used for the November 9th national test. The current Sage Model 3644 digital indec was used as the radio station unit. This unit was about to be installed at radio station WQXI in Atlanta and was programmed with the appropriate default settings for the station and the Fulton County, Georgia local area. Recordings were used to provide the EAS originating message and to simulate radio station programming. For the test, we used a variation of EAS copy that's part of the Georgia State EAS plan. The message was read a number of times in order to fill 2 minutes and 30 seconds, which will be the approximate length of the real message. Since we did the test, FEMA released the actual copy that will be used on November 9th, but the message length and the results should be similar to this demonstration.
3, 2,
This is an emergency action notification test. All broadcast stations and cable systems shall transmit this emergency action notification test message. This station has interrupted its regular programming at the request of the White House to participate in the National Emergency Alert System test. If this had been an actual emergency, most stations would remain on the air, providing news and information to the public in assigned areas. This is WQXI Atlanta. We would continue to serve the Fulton County area. If you are not in this local area, you would tune to stations providing news and information for your local area. You are listening to the National Emergency Alert System.
Because that message basically repeats. They wanted to fill 2.5 minutes to make the whole thing run. But I was particularly interested in the graphic at the beginning of that, where that just showed they had this special EAS unit that's used at the national level, or perhaps there are ones like that also used at the PPAC station level, which there are a couple dozen or 3 dozen or so. Yeah, that graphic right there. So it had a FIPS code for Washington, D.C. And then the blue arrow that's going diagonally down to the blue unit, that would be, whatever is all the intervening stuff between that test unit that's generating this test and the local radio station. Chris, can you comment on this setup and what you saw there and versus what stations can expect to happen on November the 9th?
Well, that's pretty much what the station should expect. Normal programming taking place, sports, news, music, whatever you're doing. And then the usual EAS or EAN in this case is going to be the alert. Tones will come in, get decoded, and then relayed accordingly. If you've set your boxes up properly, they'll interrupt program material as it should. And off it goes in the 2 minutes and 30 seconds worth of an announcement. The boxes that you observe, the blue one is what typically is used at the radio station side. The gray one would be the encoder used for special encoding for monthlies, for anything you're doing. In the case of this, is for the EAN, and the EAN only comes from the White House or the executive branch, and that's how it's going to work out. I think it's important to note that broadcasters need to alert the audience in some form or shape that this is coming, but not in a dramatic way, just so that when they think of it, you're at home, you're in the car, you're at work, you're listening to your favorite radio station, all of a sudden this comes on, you're familiar with the tones. Let's just assume that you're an audience that gets it and goes, yep, okay, it's that test. I see it on my cable TV, and I've heard on television, watched the bars, and I hear it on my radio station. But then what you normally don't hear is this is a message from the White House. So think about it. You're not paying attention. You're not paying attention. It's out of context. It's off axis from your hearing auditory canal. And all of a sudden you hear something about tones. So you hear tones, the usual thing, and then you hear the words White House, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, whoa, what's going on? Think about it.
Yeah.
This is a test. We have to promote it in the sense of it's just a test to make sure that we're prepared, and that's all it is. Not to get yourself all worked up. But think about it. What you just heard, that script that was just recited on that video. When you're listening to that, did your ears, at least subconsciously or something, just perk up when you heard those words, the White House? Give it some thought.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
How often are we paying true attention to what's being said by the spoken word on a radio station when you're busy doing other things? You're not. But you are monitoring, your brain monitors keywords. Let's use that phrase. Keywords, key phrases, and all of a sudden you stop and think. I'm just saying, Orson Welles did it to us how long ago?
Quite a while ago, before we were born. But yeah, we all know the story, sure. So let me ask this: if at the beginning of that video, the part that we skipped, there are some instructions about how to make sure that your station EAS decoder is properly programmed to make sure that this national test is going to be received. And most of my understanding, if I got the message right, that out of the box, EAS decoders from the various manufacturers, and the ones they showed there were from Sage. These decoders are already programmed to handle the national level test. If I got that right,
the newest ones, the newest ones
okay.
are. I forget when that started, but I do know I can at least speak for the Sage units that I've worked with. You can get the necessary updates from them on their, I believe it's on their website. But if you've purchased any of their stuff within the last couple of months, if not longer, I think they're ready to go. I cannot speak for the TFTs or the others that are out there. But yeah, it's an easy check.
At the beginning of that video, there are instructions that tell you what to look for in your particular EAS receiver, and they also have there's some website information. We skipped it at the beginning of the video, but we're going to put the video's URL in the show notes, and you can search for it too on YouTube. National EAS Test EAN demonstration. You can also go to the account Radio Mag Online. And that's under Radio Mag Online. There's quite a few different videos about the broadcasting business, including some from the sponsors of the show. Also, there's a 5-minute video on there from Leif Clayson about the Omnia 9, and from other manufacturers too. So check that out. They do say, don't try this test yourself. Okay, so don't put these tones on the air. I don't know. Could you put the wrong tones on the air yourself?
Oh, sure.
You could.
Yeah, you could.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
it's happened. I think let me see. It's one of the stations I worked with. Yeah, I think we're the recipient of wrong tones once. It actually came from a state agency. They were using a broadcast EAS encoder and mistakenly put the wrong codes in. And when we received it, we're looking at them going, wow, that's something you don't see every day. It was for like a nuclear disaster, nuclear plant disaster or something. Like, wow, we don't even have one in that area that they just transmitted from. So yeah, you can easily. There's
more information at the end of the video that we didn't go to. The whole video is almost 8 minutes long, so we didn't show the whole thing. But at the end, there's a URL to go to. It's a best practices guide for the EAS National Test Toolkit. It's a FEMA.gov URL. It's a slash and a bunch of stuff, and a slash and a bunch of stuff, and a slash and a bunch of stuff. So we won't give it out here, but go look at the video after the show, and we'll link to it in the show notes. And hey, there you go. You should watch that stuff and be pretty prepared. All right, Chris, I think we're going to move on to a different subject now that we've pretty well killed all this EAS stuff. I hope it goes well. Just do a little prep, make sure. Chris, I should ask this question. If you're getting your monthly tests okay, should this test work? Or, well, I guess you got to check and make sure your programming's right to decode and forward the EAN, yeah?
That's correct. But if you are getting your monthlies and encoding them properly, the only thing you have to do is program the EAN. You're in good shape. So yeah, you should be 98% of the way there.
Okay. Well, this test occurs on November the 9th. That's a Wednesday. So we'll get to talk about it in a couple of weeks from now. About 3 weeks or so from now, we'll see how it went and review our performance as broadcasters. I don't know if the data will all be in by then yet. Well, we got a couple of other subjects to chat about. And Chris, I'm not sure this thing about an IntelliLink. Kind of give us a little overview of what you're talking about, and we'll pick it up from there.
Oh yes, Buick GM division is introducing IntelliLink in 2012 and 2013 vehicles. And what it does is it allows you through Bluetooth to connect your favorite audio devices to the car's audio system and interact. And I believe it's also, last I checked, offering Wi-Fi connectivity. Well, that's the goal for it. And then also it'll offer you connectivity through your XM, I think, subscription. The reason I was bringing it up as a topic is just that as broadcast engineers, it's something we have to consider, where people get their audio or their content from. And once you can make the vehicle more than just an AM/FM radio device, or we'll say AM/FM satellite radio, and offer up other options that you have with you, like your smartphone technology, it changes the game, the landscape. So I just thought it'd be good for everyone to hear about it. Look it up. It's in you'll see it in the Radio World website, and there's all the websites talking about it. It's like Ford Sync and a few other things that are coming out that everybody, the automotive industry is shifting, and it's now putting things like this in the vehicles. As you know, they're on a 3 to 5 year cycle. So if they're putting it in this 2012 model year, that means they've been working on it now for 3 or 4 years. So they've probably got it working really well and perfected. So just that's basically what I was just trying to bring to everyone's attention.
Gotcha. All right. Hey, I was noticing one more thing in the news before we head to commercial. The FCC has slashed a pirate's fine to $250, and it was $10,000. What? I mean, gee, a Florida man will have to pay only $250 instead of the original $10,000 penalty for operation of an unlawful radio station. Thomas Moray had been slapped with a notice of apparent liability. That's the legal term, a notice of apparent liability for operating. By the way, if you got a notice of apparent liability, would you apparently pay it? For operating on 88.3 megahertz from his garage for 2 to 3 weeks. Well, that's not so flagrant. I mean, there's people been on the air for years, it seems like, as pirates. The regional director of the South Central Region for Enforcement Bureau of the FCC accepted the documentation submitted by Morey and his attorney that he is in no position to be able to pay the fine. Well, how much did he spend on his transmitting gear? Can you transmit for $250? I guess you probably can. You can get.
Yeah, you could. You could. Depends on power level you're trying to get.
The story doesn't say, how much power he was running here. I don't know, $250. That doesn't seem like much at all. Well, in a similar story, Florida's been a particularly favored spot, for radio pirates. The FCC announced a few months ago that they have a total of $50,000. That's $5,000, $10,000 fines in separate cases of unlicensed stations. Let me see if I can find this the same one. Oh yeah, Thomas L. Morey operated an unauthorized station from his garage in St. Petersburg, Florida. Oh, I played good music. Now there's no more information as to what power level he's running. But from his garage, I mean, how much? I don't know. He didn't have a big transmitter. Maybe had a Ramsey kit or something. This whole idea of pirate stations, of course, licensed broadcasters are not in favor of this at all. I mean, licensed broadcasters went through a whole lot of trouble to get their license. All kinds of legal fees and application fees, and finally or maybe you had to buy the license from somebody else or get it at an auction. I mean, even in small town America, it's easy to pay $100,000 for a license to run a radio station, and then you got to build the station. Gone are the days when you could just apply for a license and get it. Now they all go through auction, and in fact, I always found this kind of distressing. Before the Communications Act of, I want to say it was 1996. This was back during the Clinton administration. Before that happened, anybody and his brother could petition the FCC to allocate a frequency to some town, if that frequency would be available, and then that same person could, and unfortunately anybody else could too, could go apply for a license for that frequency. So again, it's a two-step process. You had to petition the FCC to allocate a frequency. I'm talking about the FM band here and TV as well. Allocate a frequency to a town, and that frequency, again, you had to show that, hey, this frequency will fit. It'll cover that town from a location in this area, and it won't interfere with anybody else, and it meets all the rules. And hey, if you were putting a station in, West Undershirt, Montana, no problem. You could find a frequency that would go in. East of the Mississippi River in the U.S., not so easy to work a station in, although it certainly has been done. Even in the last 15 years or so, it certainly has been done. West of the Mississippi, lots of places where a station would fit. Well, you could do all this, and I, with my business partner, Larry Fuss, we obtained a number of licenses this way. Petitioned the FCC to put it here, be the successful applicant for it, and then you got a license, and all it cost you was the application fees and the engineering fees. And if your partner is an FCC engineer who can do the studies, then the costs become fairly minimal at that point. Well, that all changed with the auction process. Now the poor guy can't get a radio station license because it's going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars at a minimum to bid for a license at auction. And that's how the FCC distributes license nowadays. They are auctioned off. And there's favoritism in the auction process, favoritism given to certain classes of applicants for these. So, back before 96, when I hear people complaining, hey, poor man can't get a radio station. How much? It's only for the big companies. Well, no, that wasn't true before 96. Before 96, you could get a radio station. No, it wouldn't be in New York, and it wouldn't be in Tampa, Florida, and it wouldn't be in Seattle or Portland or Los Angeles. But you could get a radio station. I was able to get a part ownership in a total of 11 radio stations, and it just wasn't all that expensive. But now, sorry, it's expensive now. They have these auctions, the auction process, and the bidding goes up pretty fast on some of these. There was a station that we were interested in Mississippi, and the bidding went up to close to $500,000 for the license in Greenville, Mississippi. Small town, 70,000 people, maybe 50,000 people. I don't know. It's just economically, I just don't understand how that could work out. And the folks who ended up getting the license ended up getting it at a bit of a bargain because they had some set-asides for them, and we couldn't get it. And so anyway, they got it, and they're not doing so well. They got a big debt service to pay on that expensive license. I don't think it's a very good process. Now it certainly is a process of whoever has the money can get the license. On the one hand, I say it's not a very good process. If you put money into it, certainly you're going to want to develop it and use it and make the most of it. You're going to have incentive to get that done. Whereas if you didn't have much into it, okay, maybe that incentive's not there so strongly. Here, I'm rambling on. Chris, you got any feelings about this? You know much about the licensing process?
Yeah, what you spoke of is absolutely true. Prior to 1996, you had a fair chance to get into the broadcast industry, get on the airwaves, serve the public in the form that the original Communications Act, I think of 1934, was about. But since then, yes, auctioning is, I always say, follow the money. Who benefits from this whole change of legislation that took place? And that's what's sad about it. And you're right. There are favors, in auctioneering, and there are many ways to game the system. And people have definitely done that. And you're right. Stations that auction off at a price at multiples that are far greater than the revenue they'll ever receive is a waste of time and is bad business. Yet we seem to be liking that for some reason. That same administration, that same administration that enacted that new change, the same administration that removed certain financial restraints on the finance industry. And here we are today with some issues. So there's where my line from follow the money comes into play.
Yeah. Well,
certain things need to be regulated.
Yeah, I do recall that. When consolidation started to occur, this was the part of the Telecom Act of '96 that allowed big conglomerates like Clear Channel and Citadel and Cumulus and CBS and others to get a lot of stations in a market. There are still limits, but to have a lot of stations in a market. And I'm not saying that's particularly a bad thing or a good thing. I'm just saying that's the way it was. And this was during the Clinton administration. I'm surprised. Maybe I shouldn't be, but I'm surprised that the administration, led by the guy that said, "I feel your pain," that people voted for him, thinking that he was there for the little guy. Well, during that administration, the rule came to pass that basically eliminated the little guy from ever getting a radio station, unless he just mortgaged everything he had to get. I mean, paid way more than he should have. Now, look, I get there's a lot of philosophy about this. Folks who know me know that I'm basically a libertarian, and hey, if on the one hand, the way it was before cost very little to get, but you know what? The government hadn't done anything to improve its value. In other words, an entrepreneur had to get it and then improve its value and then sell it for more later on. That's fine. to auction it off now, and so many speculators get in the game, and the price can go way up. People asked about what are the set-asides. Well, the set-asides were basically if you were a minority bidding for it, you automatically got something like 25% off the final price. So me bidding for it, if my bid was $400,000, I had to pay $400,000. If a minority bid for it, they would bid $400,000 and they had to pay $300,000. So that was the and there were other set-asides too. I'm not sure of what they all were, but anyway. Just didn't seem like a fair or a good process. It just seemed like antithetical to the way that we had been doing things in the past. Oh well, it's the way it is. Now, if you want to buy a radio, station, there certainly are some at fire sale prices. I could probably name you some
fire sale price.
A couple $100,000. You can get a radio station for a couple $100,000. I mean, that's equipment and everything. That's tower, building, equipment, everything. You can easily buy a station. Well, in fact, my business partner just sold a station for $150,000, an AM station.
Excellent.
And that included the tower and the transmitter site and the property that the transmitter site's on, and the goodwill and the license. Speaking of which,
the person will turn in their license, sell the property, and make 4 times the value.
Yeah. Sorry, I was trying to read the chat room. Navion asked, you used to have to prove you could operate the station without any income for some period of time. I don't think that's the case anymore. You don't have to show that.
No, it's not. That's long gone.
Long gone. And there used to be the process of comparative hearings. Remember back in the day when I said anybody and his brother can apply for an open license. If several people did, then you'd have to go to a court and have a comparative hearing. And those certainly happened quite a bit. There was a lot of shenanigans, played there too. So I'm not sure. How do you give away? How do you allocate a precious resource? On the one hand, okay, the libertarian in me says, money's not a bad way to do that. Whoever's going to pay the most money for it is probably going to do the best job with it because they've got a lot invested in it. So. I don't know.
Well, the Communications Act of 1996 pretty much made radio and TV a commodity. And once you do that to anything, it no longer becomes what it was. It's just what you think it could be. And the prices go through the roof. The value, the expectations are no longer realistic. And as I was employed by a radio station that was at the beginning of that whole process. And we were producing, after expenses and everything else, we're about $1.2 million a year in revenue. It was about a $2.2 million station in total gross sales. At the end of that wonderful consolidation and crazy speculation craze, station sold for approximately $10 million, and since that day has yet been able to show a profit or do anything, and has changed ownership, has lost its stature in the community, and now I believe is basically automated. But prior to that, the station was producing both for the community, both economically, both as a business, and every year it did its thing. It did what it was supposed to do and made money, as it's supposed to as a private entity. But after it became a commodity, the expectation was, right now the industry is 4 times multiple. It's like, folks, let's be realistic here. The marketplace has about a $5 million base if you're lucky, and you're sharing it with 10 other people. If you get a third of it, great, good luck. You're selling the place and expect it to be able to produce $10 million a year. No, not happening. And that was the start of it back in the, back 88, 87, 89. And then slowly it crept up. And then when the Communications Act came along, it just accelerated it even more. And you're right. When you lift those restrictions, what do you have? Right? I worked at a radio station that was locked out of a venue, pushed out of a venue that we had access to through a contract, through payment. You paid full access because the new owners of that, entertainment company were also the new owners of the radio stations that now were owned in the market because they were allowed to own the entertainment, broadcast, and something else. And guess what? They broke the contract with us, said, that's it, we're done. Here you go, we'll pay out the penalty, goodbye. And our competitor got access. Where's the level playing field there? Totally legal, ethical, moral, probably not, but That's what started, and that's how things have gone. And now look at, that's what you have today. And you're right. You're lucky if you can get yourself a station and do it right and make money or even prosper in any form or shape, because the speculation or the expectations are way out of left field.
In the chat room, Web349 says the station used to have to operate in the public interest, but not anymore due to deregulation. Well, I would challenge that statement. A station still has to maintain a public file, and that public file now has to be available on the internet if a station has an internet presence. So there's actually a bit more work to do. It all has to be scanned and done electronically. If someone comes in and wants to see the public file, they have to be able to see the public file. If they want to make copies of the public file documents, then reasonable accommodation has to be made for people to receive copies of that. Do people actually come in and look for the public file? Almost never know. And if there is, it's often something personal. Like the general manager's ex-wife comes in and says, I want to see the public file, not knowing about anything in it. And the public file still has to have issues and program lists maintained, for example. So there are requirements that a station has to do, and I think they're fairly antiquated. I mean, if you've got $500,000 in a small town radio station just for the license, it's not including the tower, which is another $400,000, and land and building and transmitter and studio space and all that kind of stuff. If you've got that kind of money tied up, are you not going to operate in the best interest of the people who you're serving in your town? I think generally yes, and if you're not, you don't deserve to make money. You're probably not going to make money, and you're going to end up losing money, and you're going to end up selling the radio station, hopefully to somebody who will take better care of it. I don't know. What do you think?
No, that's true. That's true. Well, back in the day, you had these rules in place to ensure a level playing field, so that, yes, you were serving the interest of the public, and there was some metrics to follow that you can verify it. And by having an open book policy, if you will, and public inspection file, as it's called, you could do that. You knew that, you could try and be hanky-panky, double books, whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, if somebody walked in and said, I would like to see the public file, I'm a member of the community, and you didn't produce the file as it should be, they had you dead to rights. I mean, legally. So they kept you honest. But today's public file has been watered down considerably, and yeah, you still have to maintain it. But you're right. I don't know how many people probably call and ask about it anymore, because in the day, if your license was up for renewal and you had the chance for a comparative hearing, the public file inspection was the first place everybody went. Today, it won't do much for you with the auctions and the way everything is set up.
Yeah, well, the different theories being bandied about in the chat room and statements being made, and there's a lot of sides to these stories and where we are with broadcasting, and as a broadcaster, as a license holder, part of a license holder myself, it's always gotten a bit under my skin that broadcasters, radio and television, terrestrial broadcasters, have standards to adhere to that, say, newspapers don't. Anybody and his brother can go start a newspaper. You can go start a penny saver. You can publish whatever you want, and there's almost no restrictions whatsoever on doing that. Maybe you have to get a local business license, but you can buy a printing press or hire that out and print whatever you like, distribute it, sell it, whatever you want. But if you're a broadcaster, there's this precious commodity. It's the public airwaves, which that's a whole subject in itself too. In the end, does the public file make any difference? Yes, a couple of stations have lost licenses because of poor maintenance of the public file, or they've lost challenges to their license because they haven't addressed the issues of the local community, which I don't know. I think it's a lot of hogwash myself. People in the chat room are asking, is radio the buggy whip manufacturer of the 1900s? And okay, there's some evidence to say, yeah, it's the beginning of the end for radio. But there's other folks who would point out, wait a minute. Radio listening among the young dynamic folks, 18 to 34, is up now more than ever. It's up over last year. It's up over the year before. We thought that 8-tracks would kill radio. We thought that cassette tapes would kill radio. We thought that television or MTV would kill radio. And yet people are still listening to radio by the millions and millions and millions every single day. So I'm not standing up crowing and proud and say, hey, look at me, I'm king of the hill here. But there's not there's not evidence for erosionness. Good Sound says podcasting will kill radio. Well, hey, I listen to podcasts a lot. Still listen to radio a lot too. You have thoughts about radio, where it's going before we hit our commercial? In terms of listenership? Hey, Lisa.
Sorry about that. Like the disruption in plan here. The buggy whip analogy for radio is not radio itself, not the medium. It's probably more of the programming and what people try to do with it. Radio's going to be around for a while, and listenership has been up and down. It's probably more stable than most other media out there when it comes to listeners, even compared to viewership on, say, a web or TV. But I think what the buggy whip thinking should be applied is where programming comes into play. That's the part that people just like, wow, nothing's changed there, and yet everything around us continues to change. The products like from Steve Jobs is a point in case in point, that is.
Hey, when we come back from commercial, I've got some thoughts about, satellite radio was going to kill terrestrial radio. Hey, $10, $12 a month, 100 channels, then it became 200 channels or some such, and that was going to kill local radio. And there's a lot of good comments in the chat room right now. I want to get to those. But first, I want to tell you about the sponsor of our show, which is my employer, Telos. And I'm kind of excited about some things that I picked up in Amsterdam at the IBC convention there. I'm actually not going to talk so much about Telos. I'm going to talk about this company that has partnered with Telos, and there are a number of companies which have partners with Telos and also with Axia to come up with some interesting third-party solutions for broadcasters. One of them is this company, and I'll hold this up here. It's Broadcast Bionics. These are some really cool people. I've been to their office, their laboratory in England. It's in Haywards Heath. Remember when they had that mad cow disease outbreak in England? This is the farm next door. But there's no mad cows there now, actually. There is a beautiful laboratory where they develop fantastic software and some hardware solutions. And let me see if I can put this back in front of the camera here. Sorry about this. This is, I'm glad Broadcast Bionics isn't paying for this commercial. It's not really high class, is it? Intercom Plus is a really cool solution. Axia has these intercom units that connect up to an Axia Livewire network. Well, if you have several different locations of studios that are disparate, distance from each other, and you don't have, a fiber between these locations, but you have, ordinary internet or WAN type services, well, you can connect these locations together for intercom purposes. So you can just punch a talk to button on your Axia intercom, and through a gateway, through an MPEG gateway, your audio gets, cranked down to more manageable bit rates, goes through the internet or the WAN, and then shows up at the intercom unit of who you want to talk to in a distant city or halfway around the world or across town. What's also cool about this solution from Broadcast Bionics is that the names of who you're talking to show up properly at the distant studios. You program how that shows up, and so it doesn't help you if you see Studio One's calling you. Well, it could be Studio One next to down the hall from you. Well, this ends up saying Site A Studio One, or Radio 5 or WXYZ Studio One. So it takes care of little housekeeping things like that. Very cool solution. Intercom Plus from Broadcast Bionics. Another solution. I've talked on this show before about the Telos VX voice over IP SIP phone system. And some folks need more lines and more studios than one of the Telos VX engines can handle. So the folks at Broadcast Bionics have this glue, this software that's running on a PC platform that ties a bunch of VX engines together. So now, and it can tie them together, by the way, even over distance. So you can manage phone lines across distance and do a show today from one city that you normally do from another city. Take phone calls as if you're in the normal city. Just lots of cool solutions with that. In fact, other broadcasters, big broadcasters, are looking at these kind of things to help them run their operations. CBC in Canada is looking at solutions like that, and BBC is as well. There's one more thing, and we don't usually talk so much about free stuff, but here's something that's absolutely free from Broadcast Bionics and from Telos. It's this X-Screen call screening software. It does come free when you buy a Telos phone system like an NX12 or an NX6 phone system. It comes free with this X-Screen Lite software, which is phone call screening software. So that's a joint project with the folks at Broadcast Bionics. I'm really high on this company. If you would check them out, a lot of their products work with a lot of our products at Telos. Broadcast Bionics is the dealer in the UK, in England, for Telos products and Omnia products and for Axia products. So they know what they're doing, and they're really good programmers. They've even added some extra screens to Axia Element consoles, giving them more functionality than they had before. Specific little things that UK broadcasters wanted. So I'm really high on these guys. Good folks, and if you check them out, I would appreciate it. And this message, though, has not been paid for by them. It's been paid for by Telos Systems on the web at telos-systems.com. By the way, before the show is over, in just a few minutes, we're going to give away tonight 2 licenses for Omnia AXE software. This is streaming software with audio processing built in. Runs on a Windows platform, runs as a service, so it's unobtrusive in the background, and it will ingest audio by whatever audio card you have or by LiveWire, and spit it back out as a compressed stream in any of the normal formats you like. We'll be giving that away very shortly, and thanks for all the folks who retweeted. All right, Chris, what we're going to talk about? I said it just before we went to break. I forgot all about it.
I should have wrote it down. I did not.
Yeah, well, maybe the chat room will remind. What's that?
I said no. I just said oopsie. I just blanked out on that. I was just writing some other notes for us.
Oh, somebody in the chat room says. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, somebody in the chat room said. In fact, Navion says, "Too bad Omnia AXE is on Windows, but it works like a champ." Well. On our commercial next week, I'll tell you about something really cool. In fact, well, here, I love to just move the camera around just a sec here and show you something. You see that? You see that? That is a Telos Pro Stream, and that is R&D unit number 3. Soon to be produced, soon to be out the door as a full, consumer unit, broadcast unit. It has it's an appliance, a one rack unit appliance. You put audio into it, you get streaming out, and it has Omnia processing built in, and of course it has all the Fraunhofer codecs built into it. So that's really cool. We'll be talking about that at the AES convention. But it's up, it's working. A couple folks around the world have been streaming from it and listening to it from here. I dare not give you the URL because you'll overwhelm it. I'm sure. So we'll be talking about that next time. Thanks, Navion, for bringing that up. All right, where were we, Chris? Help me out.
Well, let's see. There's the infamous Spectrum issue with the broadcasters losing out to the FCC in the auctions. There's that word again, auctions. That keeps rearing its head, and the NAB, I think, now is citing some type of survey that was done with the Citicorp folks, saying that there is no crisis going on with the phone carriers, and everybody's crying wolf now. I don't know if you've heard anything or if anyone's talked to you or if you've been following that, but it's been chaotic here in the city.
This is not an issue that I've been up on, except for hearing occasionally about taking away TV spectrum. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Now there's a report out that I think the Commerce Department has identified 1,500 megahertz of federal spectrum for further evaluation for wireless broadband. So let's get this straight.
And is it? Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. This is what?
Well, of course, if you ask, is it needed? Well, that depends on who you ask, right?
Absolutely. It's interesting when you start reading details into some of these reports, and you start to take a bird's eye view. You realize, wait a minute, the folks who currently have spectrum aren't even using all of it currently. So why are they asking for more? And then all of a sudden, there's the crisis. There's no spectrum out there. We're running out of it. We're losing it, and then you get this announcement, oh, by the way, there's 1,500 megahertz available sitting out there that the Feds are sitting on and doing nothing with. Oh, so now what do? Do we still rape the broadcast TV folks of Spectrum? Maybe even AM and FM at some point? or do we look at this other 1500 megahertz and say, well, can this be used? It's just, I cannot believe there's a crisis the way the carriers, and I'll just use that word, claim there is, because of, I don't believe that they're even using their spectrum they currently have efficiently when you start reading about how the technology can be deployed and what can be done with it. And it's just amazing what doesn't happen. So nothing's adding up properly. But it's the big buzzword right now. The NAB is getting involved with the CTIA. That's the what do you call it? The folks with the wireless communications technology industry or something like that. So they're all up in arms and they're battling it out in Washington. That's the latest.
Well, my opinion, for what it's worth, is that I think that in the long run, every ounce of spectrum that is available and can be made efficiently available for mobile connectivity, mobile internet, mobile whatever kind of connectivity we have now and in the future, I think that's where things are going, and I'm not upset about that. Now, it doesn't mean I'm not interested in taking spectrum away from terrestrial broadcasters at this point, and I think we have about the right number of terrestrial broadcasters. I don't think we necessarily need a lot more. I don't think we need a lot less. It's going to be interesting. Where are things going to land in 50 years? In 50 years, will we still have or need over-the-air TV stations, for example? Because most TV viewing is not mobile, at least not now and not in the U.S. Maybe in some other countries there's a lot of mobile viewing. I do a little work with a local TV station here in Nashville, and I asked the engineer. He was giving me a tour of the big back room where all the infrastructure is and all the servers, and we were walking by one rack, and he pointed out a piece of gear. He says, "That's the most important piece of gear in the station." I said, "Really?" I would have thought maybe here the most important piece of gear would be your master control switcher or your STL to the transmitter site. He said, "Well, that piece of gear right there," and I forget what it was. It was some kind of fiber modulator. He said that piece of gear carries our signals, actually all three of them, across the street to Comcast. And if we lose the transmitter, we've lost, I don't know what it might have been, we've lost 8% of our audience. If we lose this box, we've lost 92% of our audience. I'm making these numbers up, but it was some very high number like that. So at what point do we no longer need TV transmitters at what point are we spending all this money for tower and spectrum and electricity to hit 300 people over the air?
True.
I don't know.
That's a question that's being pondered by the TV folks. I know, if you look at an example here in New York City, when, we had the 9/11 incident, the collapse of the building, that's where all the broadcasters were transmitting from, and only one broadcaster happened to have an old site available at the Empire State Building, fired that up, and they had more people, just as many people watching there as they were on cable. Everybody else was transmitting to the cable head ends, and that's how people got their stuff. But, you're right. 50 years from now, viewing will definitely be different. I mean, right now you got Apple's iOS 5 coming out with the iCloud, and part of the game-changing element there is mobile TV. So, will that be the driving force to move people off of what we're accustomed to in, TV viewing and now make it more mobile? And if it becomes mobile, where's the connectivity? Over a carrier, phone carrier, or some other type of technology?
Yeah. Obviously, I've grown up with, my career has been about this notion of broadcasting, not TCP/IP connections, although, hey, I'm fully familiar with that kind of stuff, but this notion of one-to-many broadcasting, where it doesn't matter how many receivers are out there. It doesn't cost any more for anybody's infrastructure for there to be 10 receivers or 10 million receivers. The signal is still, blowing by your antenna, and you can still pick it up. That, I think, is a very interesting and very efficient model. Of course, it's also a very one-way model, and everybody's watching the same thing at the same time. As people are in community, that's not such a bad thing. What happened? Are the days gone when we say, "Hey, did you see Lost last night? Hey, did you see Terra Nova last night? Hey, did you see the new CSI last night?" Or Dancing with the Stars, or whatever's the hip popular thing lately. There is that sense of community, that non-real-time stuff or fragmented things like the internet don't tend to bring us so much. I got to believe, though, at some point in the future, is it 20 years out? Is it 200 years out? At some point, do you think we're going to have a more unified structure? Will everything be IP, or will everything be something that we haven't found yet? Or will we, I guess this is probably the way it's going to go, we will always have overlapping, somewhat fractured technologies, the oldest ones like the buggy whips, not being used anymore. Long-wave radio, for example, pretty much shut down around the world. AM radio, so many AM talk stations are moving to an FM in their city of license, in their market. When will we see AM go away? When will eventually we see FM go away and everybody is on some kind of cellular streaming service for their car, for their personal radio, to fill up their iPod with something that, the latest local news, the latest national news, and they can just, get it when they want to. I don't know. I got to believe that someday there won't be any more FM transmitters around, but there will be a way to get anything you want on a portable device, and it'll be simple. And I got to believe that there's going to be ways to experience new entertainment, and still, if you want to, hey, twice an hour, you're still going to get news. I may still want top of the hour news. I may want the 3-minute version, not the 5-minute version. I may want, at the bottom of the hour, I may really want to have 1 minute of local news. What did the city council do last night? What was the siren going by my house last night? What was that about? Wouldn't that be cool if we could, not in a complicated way, but in some simple way, be able to program what we hear and yet leave room to experience new things? You see any infrastructure or system like that in our future?
I believe so. I believe you'll see that probably coming out of the WiMAX LTE technologies that are currently evolving. Even the current TV transmission, the HD stuff, the way it's transmitting, once it becomes a packetized stream or carrier, there's a lot you can do with it. There's probably, I would say, 2 or 3 technologies out there that could easily be employed to offer that up, and then you can have the back channel through your cell phone connection, your internet connection, broadband, so you can have an interactive experience that way. So you can still do the one-to-many and then have the back channel return in a more efficient way than you may have done, say, 5 years ago or 10 years ago. With dial-up modems is a method that's still, actually it's still used by some of the folks in TV. But I think you'll see a hybrid. I don't think it'll be a one-shot removal, but it'll be a hybrid all throughout. That's pretty much where it comes from, where it's going to go.
Yeah, so many aspects of this that we could talk about, and I really want to know what all this tech, all this entertainment distribution looks like years and years from now. I have no idea how it's going to look, and I don't know how you predict that. There's financial interest. There's people with a lot of assets tied up, and then there's we're always pushing the limit, like the TWiT network, like what Leo's doing, pushing the limit of a newer technology to supplant, to get around the older technology and all the baggage and the weight that goes along with a traditional a cable TV network or even a terrestrial over-the-air type of station. I don't know. There's a lot to. I think it's very exciting what could what the future is going to hold. Even though it's going to be chaotic, I still think that's exciting. And I guess I'm going to stop my comments with that. We're out of time, and we should we should be quiet and let another newer broadcaster come along, maybe one that doesn't have any buggy whips attached to it. Chris, do you have any final comments about where you think that this entertainment thing is going to go, and when we can say goodbye to our transmitters?
I'm of the mindset that saying goodbye to the transmitters is going to be at least probably 10 years out. I think as we become more creative with our ways of distributing content or broadcasting, because broadcasting is more than just the radio and TV that we're aware of. But I think with what you're seeing will be a metamorphosis of how people consume content, and those methods that they consume are going to stay around for a while, because the easiest ones, least common denominator, the ones that you can get the quickest, are going to still be the ones that'll survive if the content is there to support it. Just as you pointed out, I hear sirens go by in my local community. Where do I tune in to find that out? Oh yeah, you know what? My radio station will have that before somebody else on the web does. And until that changes, which is not going to happen that easily. I think you're going to see at least another 10 years worth of broadcasting as we know it mechanically, but the content side of it will definitely evolve. I mean, once cars get Wi-Fi in them natively, and you can do USB control, Bluetooth control, and access the outside world while you're on the in the four wheels, that's when the things change around. But it's, again, you're not removing the transmitters anytime soon. I just think people in broadcasting have to get more creative with the content.
Super Tech Steve in the chat room reminds us something that we should all have top of mind as whether we're broadcasters, netcasters, webcasters, or consumers of this kind of thing, and that is that, thanks Super Tech Steve, content is king. Super Tech Steve didn't come up with that phrase. It's been around for a long time. But it's true. Content is king. And it doesn't matter. If the content is good, people will find a way to consume it. That's why the Twit Network is so popular among the hundreds of thousands of people who consume the programming that Leo has created and allowed to create on the Twit Network and other networks as well. And, you know, if I'm driving across the country late at night and I tune into an interesting talk show on the radio, even if it's AM, I'll put up with skywave and fading and those kind of effects just to hear what's going on. I remember years ago I was driving across Kentucky, and I loved listening to the Larry King Show when Larry was on Mutual Network late at night, overnight. And he had some very compelling authors and other guests on his show. And I'd put up with all kinds of noise on that to hear it. And I guess I still do that today, not necessarily with AM radio, but with other forms. I go to efforts so I can have an iPod in the car hooked to the stereo. Now, isn't that weird that I still refuse to get a satellite radio, an XM or Sirius in the car? And I guess my objection there is quality, because the bit rates are so low. And so, and maybe I just don't understand the content that's there. There's probably some compelling content that I'm just not aware of. All right, before I ramble on all night, I want to thank you for listening to this edition of This Week in Radio Tech. Chris Tobin from New York City, the best-dressed engineer in radio, has been our guest. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Just one thing I need to mention.
Yeah.
Oh, you have to say something. I just wanted to pass along, because a lot of folks here in the New York City area knew we had a broadcast engineer pass away suddenly this past Saturday.
Yes.
He passed away of a sudden heart attack or body collapse. That's what we got. He was a guy who did a lot of work here in town. And if you're familiar with Reading for the Blind, that phrase, there was an organization that went out of business. They went out of a reading service. Was an In Touch reading service. Went out of business in 1992. He went along and co-founded another company called Gatewave that picked up where they left off. So, not only did he do broadcast engineering for many New York City stations, he also served the community and the interest of the stations that he worked with. Just a note for everyone, because all of us here in New York City were taken back. And I had only talked to the guy literally a week earlier in person at a transmitter site. And when I got word that he was gone, it was like, whoa, wow, that was... and no signs of illness or anything, just collapsed at a job site. One of his clients, he was a contract engineer. So it was Richard Koziel here in New York City.
I was wondering how to pronounce his last name, and that there you go, Richard Koziel. Well, good deal. And I'm sorry to hear that Richard passed away, and thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Yeah, just a lot of folks in town. The emails went back and forth. That's why I just thought I should say it.
Hey, we have one last piece of business to do, and that is to give away 2 Omnia AXE software licenses, and this is pretty cool software. It's about $400 list price, and it's runs on a Windows platform. It does run as a service, so you can run it on a machine and kind of forget about it. Feed it some audio. Let the Omnia part process it. Let the E part, the encoding, encode it, and you've got a stream. And it can be used to fed a Shoutcast server or all kinds of different services. And you can just use it for personal use, or you can make it the basis for streaming all your stuff on the internet. My little radio stations in American Samoa and in Mississippi, we're using this software to process and stream our stuff. We send it on to Shoutcast servers so that it's available all over the place. So, hey, Chris, give me a number between 1 and 15.
12.
12. All right. Let's see. Tahu FM. Let me write that down. Tahu FM. I don't think they're from here. I think they're from New Zealand. And give me another number between 1 and 12, Chris.
4.
4. How about, well, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Mahalo Band. Mahalo Band. All right. Congratulations to Tahu FM and Mahalo Band. You're the winners of this week's giveaway of Omnia AXE. Hey, in the future, I'm trying to work out with Telos. We're going to have a really big giveaway, like So something really big. Hang on, we'll take care of that. We got to get off the air now, off the interwebs, the inner tubes, and we'll see you next week. Next week we'll have some reports that came to us from AES. Tom Ray and Chris Tarr should be back with us, so we hope you'll join us then for episode number 104. For now, that's us. That's it for This Week in Radio Tech. Bye bye, everybody.